Hello and welcome to part 3 of the presentation Truth to Action. This one we are doing on video, directly face to face here, basically with the slides in front of us. And that way we can go deeper into what is the next section about action, which I believe is very, very important because freedom is not free. It requires our actions aligning with natural law as we discovered previously, and understanding what statism is, which is the biggest breach upon our natural rights under natural law. And so, here we left off with the chart, which is comparing slavery and government, and we saw that the arguments made for both were virtually the same, and that I had video content, and you can check that out if you want, videos titled slavery still exists and it's not what you think. I have another video, 144 proofs government should not and does not exist. These are all resources to further your understanding. There's the network that I'm involved with, the onegreatworknetwork.com. So it's onegreatworknetwork.com. And then there is the website of the movement that I have based around nature's the answer and these ideas of natural law and understanding statism. And there's a link on that website, which is nita.one/advanced. That's nita.one/advanced, and you'll see a whole bunch of resources, including books and study guides and videos. So you can learn in all different formats, whatever works for you best. And if you have more questions, again, you can contact me. This presentation was particularly oriented toward the Freedom Club that I'm involved with, people who might be listening to this who were also in the room for which I recorded part 1 and part 2 of this presentation. So now we're going to continue part 3, and if you're still with me up to all this time, I really appreciate you being here, and I hope we can get really deeper into action, which I believe is the most important thing we need to know, because the truth, while it stands for itself and we can all grasp it and learn it, we have to bring it to others in a world of deception where people are telling them otherwise, or where they can never be exposed to it to begin with, and thus if people do not know something, their actions are never going to be in according to knowledge. It will be in accordance to belief or what somebody told them to do, and that is not where we want to go. We want to go with the truth, we want to go with God, with nature, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing in the world, right? And I hope most people would want that. So we're going to try to figure out here what actions can we take to amplify our voices in sharing this knowledge with people, because again, as we discovered previously, changing the minds changes the world. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to change the minds? So here is the next slide here, the hard reality, because it really is a hard reality, and I know that the second part of my presentation, the main goal I had of that was to simply create the conversation about statism and about natural law, and I don't always see that being done, and I want it to be done because frankly, not only is it so much a crucial part of the foundation of America in any form of independence all over the world, but it's fundamental to human rights. It's fundamental to our human cause for freedom as a whole. So I figured it is knowledge that everybody wants, and thus, we need to have a conversation about it. And so we need to come to terms with the truth, no matter how hard of a reality it is, because it can be difficult, and especially understanding a worldview that's never been presented to you before, that I'm saying that, wait, government doesn't exist and that it should not exist. So do you see where I'm getting at with that, and how it's a mental illusion of the mind? And you may have a lot of questions, as I assume you might, but there's actually easy answers to that. You'd be surprised, saying, well, what if, without government, how would this, how would that? Actually really easy answers, and I'm going to give you more links in the description below to help clarify more things, okay? Because if you look through all those links for yourself, you'll come to the realization that is bigger than any worldview that you'll ever come across in life. You don't get more to the root of things than this knowledge. Again, this is the knowledge that is purposely kept away from people, so people can be ruled over and essentially seen as sheep and slaves, and not just seen, but the people who are enslaved themselves through not having this knowledge. So they're doing it to themselves, and when I say they, I mean us. Our fellow people, these are all our fellow human beings in this. There is no them and us, actually. Again, the only one true divide is between the statist and the non-statist, those who believe that they are part of nature and that government simply doesn't exist, and those who do and feel like government is natural to the human cause, that it will always arise and that there's nothing we can do about it. It's basically required for human existence and for having order and peace in the world. And I talked about the natural law expressions, right? Where we go from love to knowledge to freedom to sovereignty to order. That is not through government. Government is based in fear, number one, because you are in fear of disobeying. If you disobey and you don't want to pay a tax, you have no choice, because by threat of violence, you have to pay. They put you in fear. Fear is the main way they get you under control. Again, it's a low state. And then you have control, and then you have confusion. And then, of course, you're going to have chaos, right? And you're going to have enslavement, ultimately. So there is a dynamic there, and I referred to the previous charts in this presentation, natural law versus man's law, positive expression versus negative expression, okay? And there's more resources all in the description below. So when I say you own yourself, I mean it. And do I really have to be the one to tell you that? Well, here we have a picture on the right-hand side of Jefferson and also somebody you might not be familiar with, Lysander Spooner, who wrote a lot about natural law at his time, and he was also an abolitionist, meaning he really fought hardcore to get rid of slavery. Now, say about Jefferson as you wish, because the Quakers were people who were at the time debating about this whole slave issue, and it's very hard to go against the norm of society, as did many great people in the past when they have to emerge stronger and realize that there is such a thing as objective morality in nature. You know, such a big dynamic it is. It's simply understanding natural law. And Lysander Spooner understood this, and that's why he called it for what it is. He was a writer just like Jefferson, but he was walking more than talking, because he wasn't a constitutionalist. He stood for what the Constitution stood for, which was natural law. So natural law is his focus. And then he wasn't a slave owner, because that goes against everything that essentially you say about freedom. He was an abolitionist, meaning he was against all forms of slavery, not just the slavery that was mental enslavement through government, as we talked about earlier, but physical slavery, which is the one most people refer to when they talk about slavery. So all forms of slavery. He was about freeing humankind. And just look at his quotes. Look at what's on the internet for his works. Fantastic stuff. Here you see there's a quote from him on the left-hand side. It says, "Our constitutions purport to be established by the people, and in theory, all the people consent to such government as the constitutions authorize. But this consent of the people exists only in theory. It has no existence in fact. Government is in reality established by the few, and these few assume the consent of all the rest, without any such consent being actually given." So that really debunks the whole argument of for the people, by the people. This is not something that we are in control of. Can you tax your legislators? No. Try that. You're not allowed. And if they tax you and you're not allowed to pay for it, then how could you say you run the government? You don't. And you say, okay, well, we can just elect new people. Can you elect a new slave master if you're still a slave? Again, these dynamics must be further explored. There needs to be a conversation, dialogue, open up to this, and not just ignoring and say, well, this is impossible, this is far off, and maybe we'll get there in time, but right now we have to focus on this. No. Do not ignore when the opportunity comes to you. If there is slavery, I'm all about freeing the slaves. Period. Nothing more. Nothing less. That is what we must focus on, because that is the root cause to the situation. Everything else is symptom-based management. So this goes hand in hand with the actions that we have to take. We don't want to focus on the symptom. We want to get to the root cause. And what we see is that order following is the root to all evil. Again, evil is present, good is present. It's our choice of what we want to do through our actions. So technically, evil only grows when people follow it and permit it and enforce it. So that means good people generally letting wrong things happen, or good people, or just people in general, literally giving credence to evil and letting it go amok. And likely it's because they don't know about it. Because likely most people, if they knew it was bad or it was evil, they wouldn't do it. Okay, if someone knows that something's going to give them cancer, they're likely not going to want to do it. okay? Unless they're looking to literally harm themselves, which is the point of which humanity is actually kind of heading toward, is where people want to actively seek self-harm. I mean, that is where we are at as humanity, and that's not a good thing to see, but again, it shows us our detachment from nature. Detachment from wanting to live on, to reproduce, to survive. And we would survive the most optimally when we understand these truths that are showing through time, that's saying, well, wait, do we need government at all? Because after all these years of slavery or years of government, just because it was done for all this time does not mean it was right. We have to question that, especially as our brains grow in size and we become smarter to understand morality through our neocortex, right? So this is a thing that is always developing, and I don't want to see it go all the way back down to where we are just all survival based and we can't really think higher because we dumbed ourselves down through not just unnatural medicines, but an unnatural system. In following and giving credence to destroying our own nature, which is bound to grow. It's meant to grow. We have the blueprint to heal, and so we have to do the same thing with the world. The world has a blueprint to heal, to be in a specific spot, and that's why there's such a thing called truth and objective truth. And we must understand what that is. What is that particular anatomy? What are those particular laws that apply all the time objectively? So again, this is understanding that government contributes to the greatest harm on earth. It is the biggest harm factor on earth because it creates something called democide, which is the leading cause of unnatural death. See, and I share this knowledge not because of me and who I am and get these ideas. No, it's about these very things that I have a moral obligation to share it with. I don't want millions of people dying. And I don't want us to keep following the same loops and keep failing. I want humanity to emerge stronger than ever, bring the power to the people, empowerment, however hard that may be, in order to really create a sustainable future for the generations to come. So, again, evil's present. Will you join the dark side? That's up to you. Will you let your survival-based instincts and basically drive you mad and cause dependence on these foreign entities that call themselves authority? Or will you take control into your own hands and saying, I'm going to be not in the dark side, I'm going to fight for what is right? Alright? And so there's a devotion here to this matter. There's courage and care involved. And so we have money, religion, science, politics, and I'm here to tell you they are not the answer. All these things are often man-made, and nonetheless, these are man-made problems and man-made solutions. The solutions often are the problems because they are man-made and they're not based in truth. They're not universal often. They're being pushed on certain people. That's the particular problem here. And thus, it fails. Our current world is more left brain dominant, so we're more among the science than the religion, and that's why a lot of people who are very religious now, who believe in God, will continue to try to say this is what will bring us back, and I'm all for that if they connect it, with nature as the answer, and they seek unity with people, and they don't push their ideas on others, then that's perfectly fine to practice it just like science, as long as it's not pushed on people and they say, well, we have to be God or we have to worship, then I'm okay with it. The problem is when we have that slave mentality of worship and everything depends on this external source, and that's essentially you being the slave to government or to God, or on science you are saying, well, I can just rule over somebody, do what I want with their body, I could change whatever I want, and that's the authoritarian master. So we want to balance between the two brain hemispheres, between religion and science, to understanding that we have natural law, which is the more religious aspect, and we have free will, which is more of the scientific random aspect that needs to align. Okay, because our free will could be everywhere, and we need to align our actions to our intentions. So money is in control of our lives much of the time. I think most people know that. They have the Federal Reserve and all the printing and everything that's going on, the quantitative easing, and it's not so much the fruits of our labor. especially when people are handed it for free, and there's all this flow going in all different directions, and it's not so much actually free, right? When I say free, the first time I meant, well, it's just given to people. When I say money should be free, what I mean by that is that it should be free commerce. People should be trading with one another as it naturally should be. And as for politics, well, frankly, if you look up the etymological definition, it's supposed to just be social gathering, not deciding, who should rule over another person. But rather, we can look at community service and looking at how voluntarily we can help change things in our own communities. That's real politics. But the way we view all these things, we often use this for control. So that's why I'm saying they're not the answer. And we have to look at nature being the answer, because a lot of these things are massive distractions, including the masks and vaccines issue. Everything is just a symptom of this root cause that is order following, which is saying that certain people can rule over me, so thus they can create the money for me that I use. They can control the religion that I am and thus control my mind. Religare means to bind the mind, or religio meaning to reconnect. And then science, where we know it all, so trust the experts. Another type of order following. And in politics, elect me in and I'll change everything for you. You don't have to do a thing. Another type of order following. So don't get distracted by those. Don't fall for it. And you will not be the order follower. You will not be the statist. So can you wake up to that first? This is where your personal action comes into play. Again, this is a personal discovery process that I cannot do for you. You have to think about this for yourself. So what about Biden and Trump? Because everybody wants to hear about these two, don't they? Everybody wants to hear about the current controversy and the current things that are currently happening in the world, and thus, they might not care at all if I say natural law is the root cause. They want to look at what's on the surface, because that's what's affecting them in their life. And frankly, we need to understand that that deeper root is natural law, number one. And then number two, these people, Biden and Trump, are just people. Why do we put them on pedestals? It's not their responsibility to change the world. And this is where I give them credence to saying, well, it isn't their responsibility to change things. For the change that we want, it's not their responsibility. They may feel like they have a moral obligation to change things, but we should have a moral obligation to change things, because it's our world that we're living in. So if you look at it, though, and you look at the appeal, right, because I think most of us know that, people such as Biden are sort of like dead puppets. Trump was more human-like, and that's, I think, why it appealed to a lot of people. That doesn't mean what he actually stood for, what he did was good. It's saying that it created more appeal, and that's important during your action, is to understanding to simply be you and not to be somebody else. That's how we get in this mess, and that's what, that's the problem with Trump, is that he followed orders, and that's why another reason why order following is so evil. He suppressed his internal feelings for everyone else around him, and because everybody was pressuring him to do certain things, he just went along with what people were saying, and that, I think, was his biggest downfall, as with any leader who really forgets that they were the ones who were elected to begin with. And the problem with the whole election process is a problem within itself, so don't forget that, even though I just said that, he was being influenced. That doesn't make him a better person. See, nobody should be in these positions to begin with. Nobody has the right to rule over another human being, period. Whether you think that it's possible or not, it isn't. And so controversy is something I wanted to see from Trump, because that shows me that he's a human being. It shows me that he's unique. And so anybody, if you're going to speak the truth, expect a little bit of controversy. Did I expect anybody to agree with what I said in the second part of my presentation? No, not at all. That's why I said, this is a process I had to deal with myself. It's not an easy thing to come to terms with. We have to do personal discovery. I did not expect it to go easy. I mean, how would you, in a world where you're trying to describe slavery and saying that everyone around us is basically enslaved? That's not an easy thing to do. And to trying to break mental barriers that we ourselves have. Nobody wants to conflict with themselves and say, wait, I'm actually the problem. No, most people just want to point the finger and say, okay, they do it and they are the problem, and just complain all day, essentially. And we don't want to complain if we want to take action, right? We want to actually do things. So in recap, what beats a belief? Knowledge. Well, how is knowledge shared? Conversation. So the one solution then, because there was one root cause, the one problem that I said we would share here in this presentation, and that was statism. The one solution is now conversation. So ending statism with conversation, and that conversation is also sharing the knowledge. It's bringing the truth to people, bringing nature to people. Those are all forms of conversation. They're conversions, bringing it to people. So ending statism with conversation, that's the one solution. But now we have to look at action, because that is step 2 of this presentation. Step 1 was knowledge. Now we have the knowledge. Now we can go into action. If you still need to understand the knowledge, I recommend you do that. But now we have to look at action. So here we have a quote from The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. In truth, rather than some event needing to occur or some particular thing needing to be done, the real solution, the only solution to the problems involving government, comes from not doing certain things and from certain things not happening. In one sense, there is no positive, active solution to government. The ultimate solution is negative and passive. Stop advocating aggression against your neighbors. Stop engaging in rituals that condone the initiation of violence and reinforce the notion that some people have the right to rule. Stop thinking and speaking and acting in ways that reinforce the myth that normal people should be and must be beholden to some master and should obey such a master rather than follow their own conscience. Okay, so that is a big summary here of what we just talked about with conversation and sharing this knowledge, which we know will change the minds and thus actually change the world. Everything else is symptom-based management. So I have 5 main questions for you, and these are the 5 main questions I made in regards to natural change, because on my website you might notice there's a big banner at the top that says the natural way to change the world. So here are questions, and I think it's rather telling because I think most people know the answers to these questions, as did they with the previous questions we shared in this presentation in part 2. So number 1, can we change the world? And most people, they might say no. But at the end of the day, they'll say yes because they realize that we are the world, right? So number 2, how can we change the world? And, it's going to be through our actions. It's going to be what we do. Again, this is mostly common sense by people. Now, again, somebody on the more right brain extreme side of things may feel like they can't do anything and that everything is under God and God has to be the one to ultimately change things. But if we're looking at natural law, we're looking at his laws. So thus, this applies to you too, okay? This applies to understanding God as well. Now, number 3, what would you look for in a movement to change the world? What would you look for? If you realize this knowledge is important and you realize that we have to take actions about it, a movement would allow multiple people to do those things. So what would you look for in a movement? You would look for people who are perhaps coordinated, like-minded, looking to do the same thing, right? And maybe bring it to a wider audience, the same goal of wanting to do that and to learn more of the information maybe with you, to help teach others this information in different ways. It could be abundance of different things like that. See, there's a lot you can do with knowledge. It's not actually like stupid, simple. It actually can be very complex sharing knowledge, right? So doing a lawsuit might seem really simple or might seem really complex, but this is not just the simplest thing, which is having a conversation with someone. It could be super complex, like making a documentary and interviewing people, but that's what's actually going to change the minds of people, not having a lawsuit. So number 4, what should be the focus to succeed and make an impact? What do you think the focus should be? If you understand the root cause to the situation and you understand the root solution, then I'm assuming that's probably going to be among your response here, but also like you might say courage, you might say, honesty, dignity, responsibility, gathering people together, getting as many numbers together so people can understand this, right? And that really goes hand in hand with number 3, which is what we just asked. So number 5 then sort of is a question that's also a proposition. What if we all shared a common message as mission around universal understandings in nature? So universal understandings in nature, that includes natural law, wouldn't it? It includes natural health, natural rights. So if we all shared a common message, right, like nature is the answer, and that was our mission, was to understand who we are and our belonging so we can end all suffering, end all slavery, then what would happen if we had that? Then it would make it way easier to say this is who we are as a movement, right? And this is what keeps us on track, which might have been one of the focuses that you wanted, and to say, this is what we want to bring to the world, and this is how we can unite more people, because people understand this, and it's universal, and it's something that is of nature, so everybody can relate to this, and thus we can actually make an impact. And because we said we can make an impact, because it is possible by simple cause and effect, we can make it done. So it's natural change, changing the minds of people through mass advertising or knowledge and conversation, and thus the world changes as a result, as the minds are being changed. So how do we do it? It's important to note that I had a movement here. Before the movement that I got involved with here with the Freedom Club that this presentation was originally going to, it's important to note that I created this before coronavirus really hit big. And it only grows more relevant by the day when I say nature is the answer, and that's exactly what my movement is. And this is, what I consider my solution, but it's one based on knowledge of nature within itself, right? Because I want to bring natural law to more people, so I looked at, well, how can I do that? I can understand that nature is the answer, something that we can relate to that will connect to such a thing, but doesn't say natural law directly right away, but bridges people to that understanding where they can learn more about that, and not just that, but natural health and everything else of the universal truth. So what is more universal and grounded than the concept of nature? Most know nature is the answer, but we must commit to it. So that's why I made this movement. I saw this so relevant, as it was a message that I held to when I was very young, and it is everlasting. It is your movement. It is simple, and I say it's your movement because you can do as you wish with this. I created such a blueprint as such, and I will get more into it, where people can actually contribute, and they don't actually have to join through signatures or some weird scheme of doing things. It's open for the public. It's all about getting the numbers of people to understand this knowledge and spread it. So I call it the one unifying counter agenda, to counter the one agenda that is world enslavement, world government, that is, trying to do the very opposite of what we're trying to do, which is create more control instead of more freedom. So the one unifying counter agenda is nature is the answer, and our goal is freedom. It is nature. Okay, so we're pro-freedom, self-governance. Only you own yourself. Government, which means mind control, as we mentioned before. Only you can be in control of your own mind. That's self-governance. Pro-humanity, self-evident. Pro-truth, hopefully self-evident. Regeneration, because we want to change the world forever through the generations, make a more sustainable world than ever. So regeneration, and we're bringing it back to the roots. We're going back to nature. So I think that's a very good word for what we're trying to do. And not, finally but not least, nonviolence. You have to promote any movement, any demonstration, the fact that people are peaceful, simply sharing ideas. There's always going to be different scenarios happening out, but if you actively promote nonviolence, I think it's always a better solution, especially when we're dealing with just changing the minds of people. It requires no physical change at all, except that, frankly, you just defend who you are yourself. And your fellow, friends and family. You defend, and again, that's a self-defense principle. You have every right to do so. So you defend the truth, you defend what is here, and that's all we're doing, right? Because we're not introducing anything new to existence, we're simply recognizing who we are, our nature. So all of this is here to remind us of who we are, and that we should not lose touch of our own humanity. We should not lose touch of our nature. And so let's call it nature is the answer, or what I have as the abbreviation for unite, or UNITÄ, which is unit A, unit anarchy, or UNITÄ, or AE, which stands for laws of nature, or unit T, because, that's what we're creating unity. So you can see that in many ways, and you can say that as you wish, but I like to call it unite, or UNITÄ. because it really puts it into perspective. You can also see it as unit E for unit equality, because that's what we're doing. Again, we're ending this pyramid system of hierarchy of masters and slaves and bringing people together to the universal truth that was hidden from them all this time. That is all around them, but simply must require the knowledge and the recognition that it is there past the barriers and beliefs that we were grown into, deception, into propaganda, planted in our minds. So we want to grow past that. We want to go back to the basics and to understanding, we're humans, we're of nature, we're not of a certain particular thing. You might live in this section, that section. We can do that. There's nothing wrong with identifying certain things as long as people are not being controlled over and certain opinions are being imposed on others. We can have a really good world. It's very simple. Most people already live their lives fine, and the whole reason why they comply with the system is because, well, everyone else is doing it, and that is often the excuse, or that, oh my gosh, something will happen to me if I disobey. So really the only thing people have to do is come together and realize that, wait, we can just defend ourselves and we can end the system as a whole. And that's more of the final actions in this process, because it is a process, okay? It is a process, and there's steps to this process. So how do we do it? My solution, as we continue here, the natural way to change the world, as I mentioned, which is also on my website, and you can find more on nita.one/steps. There's 3 main steps to the actions here. Number 1 is representation. And that requires creativity, because anytime you create a form of imagery or art form or expression of an internal or really central idea, such as nature is the answer, there needs to be something that represents that. So for nature is the answer, quite evidently, it would be nature, right? Because that's what it's trying to represent. So a designated, universal, self-created movement and flag or media presence, anything that will help you represent this idea, this message as mission. That is what helps it, this movement grow. That's what helps create more impact in your actions, saying, this is what I'm a part of. Look at all the other people a part of this, and we can move forward together in the right direction. And this direction is the idea that we are currently representing through our materials. And that's why it requires creativity. So number 2, all those people that I mentioned, is the essential part of networking. And that requires guidance, right? Because we have to work with one another. And that's what I call demonstration. Okay, so we have representation, demonstration. The final one will be presentation. Okay, so while we have numbers of people and we have materials to show who we are and what we do and what we're representing, the final one is education, which is really important because of conversation about statism, right, as we mentioned. And that requires courage, because we're facing a system of people, not just government, of people who are the ones who create government through their beliefs. And they don't control the government, but they have the government control them, this, entity that doesn't actually exist, but they give credence to in their mind, and so thus we have to break the mental barriers, and that requires a lot of courage. It requires presentation of new information that people never seen, so they can think innovatively and challengingly, so they can move forward in the future with something that is even better than they've ever had. Right? Because that's the whole point of delivering new information, is to understand, well, was I wrong, and can I move forward with a better understanding of the world, right? So self-control, aka statism, aka natural law, rights, health, etc. All those things you want to educate people about, right? So being in control of themselves, understanding the land they live on, and that they're in control of their life. They need to be self-responsible. These things that, by the way, usually, should be taught to kids from parents, and people often learn within their daily lives as they grow up, but need to realize that the government is not their mommy and daddy either, and that they own their lives. And that statism is a very dangerous belief system and contributes to forms of democide and all the other reasons I mentioned before, and how natural law ties into that, natural rights, and our health, which goes along all the same logic, by the way, which is that you own your own body. Only you can truly, help your own body. People can recommend, they can't force your body to do something, because then that's not health. Health means whole. It's recognizing the whole of the being. You know, someone's mindset is very important to their healing process. It's not just what you give them. And so people need to be on board, you know, with what you're doing and to understanding what you're doing to their own body so things don't go wrong. Health is always best as a self-responsibility too, or simply with knowledge of what is going on in the body. If you don't have knowledge of what's going on, then the doctor is not going to treat your body as they should, and thus you're not going to end up as well as you should, right? You're taking moreover chances, and chances are basically increments of knowledge that is unknown, you know, if you want to summarize what chances are. Now, if we look at these three main steps, representation, networking, and education, which is also representation, demonstration, and presentation, we can otherwise put that as two main steps. And that is integration, which is with nature, right, which is with all of us getting together and coming together and bringing everything together. And then number two, which is promotion of those said things, of nature, of us coming together, of, you know, natural law, rights, and health. So integration, bringing it to people and connecting all these things together, and then promotion, which is having it carry through the generations, you may see, and having it carry to more new people, people who are in the dark, people not exposed to this knowledge, people who are opposing. And so all that for what is disintegration and demotion. From what? That which shouldn't be, that which doesn't be, and that would be the denatured or government. And demotion from what? What creates government? Statism. Right? So what creates nature? Natural law, rights, health. What creates government? Statism. You know, dependence, lack of self-responsibility. So you can see what feeds what. And that is where promotion comes for integration and demotion comes for disintegration. Integration and promotion for disintegration and demotion. These two go hand in hand. It's called adding in to crowd out. If you add in the good, the bad will crowd out naturally. You do the same thing with the body when it comes to healthy foods, or foods that generally will feed the body versus deplete the body and give it sickness and disease and illness. So disintegrate from that which doesn't help you and is not intended for your body or not intended for the world, and demote that. Don't eat that food anymore. You know, don't participate in things that are going to make you sick. It's the same thing with the world. Don't participate in things that are going to contribute to mass slavery and death. So demotion and disintegration with promotion and integration. So integration and promotion of what's good, disintegration and demotion from what's bad. Now, what uses all three steps? Rallies. Now, you may say, okay, well, we're bringing mass amounts of people together then in that case. And I say, yeah, so that's integration. And then, well, where's the other two? Okay, so if you have public events with use of the current networks, we're using integration. If it uses all three steps, though, okay? So rallies can use all three steps, but if, because it's still dependent on the people who are holding the rally. And here's an example. You can see a rally in the picture that I have here on the screen. And there's people in the crowd, but they have a whole bunch of different signs, and there's not really a central sign that is really amplifying as a voice here. So anybody who's new to this demonstration might ask and say, well, what in the world is going on? You know, I can't look into this more for myself. If I want to look more into the resources, there's no particular website or anything like that, and I can't know how to join it so I can follow these guys and go to one of their rallies one day. So there needs to be a follow-up process and something that amplifies these voices. And that is where education and representation comes in. Representation would be if these people had a central flag or central message and idea that was shared among all these people. And they used these materials because these materials would help waking up those in the dark, and because they were all using it, it has a greater effect and chance to wake up more of the people in the dark, or more of the people that they want to reach. And education would, of course, be where that material leads, or where this demonstration leads, because all these people coming together is great, and having all the representation materials and flags and stuff are great, but that has to bring people to something in order for their minds to actually change, in order for the world to change. So there needs to be education in these efforts. Now, maybe the speakers are educational, or some of the people in the crowds are educational, but what is educational? You can say project fear or save our rights, as some of the signs say in this picture, but where could people learn more about their rights? What's going to tell them where their rights come from? What's going to promote love? This is where the education comes in. There needs to be resources present that people can see, that people can act on and look into for more for themselves. And then there's news stories and all this stuff popping up about these ideas. And then these ideas go viral. So it becomes a more amplified thing. This is where we can take our actions and make it even bigger. And it's greatly helped when we have a lot of people. So integration, education, and representation, such crucial aspects. So what is missing from this rally? Education and representation. Because what you have here is integration, mass people coming together. Great. And naturally out of this, you might have some education, you might have some representation, but they're not core, they're not central, and they can't be seen from the outskirts. How can rallies continue? When you have an amplification of those singular things that is brought more to light, and thus more people can carry that on and say, let's do this in our own town, because this is the structure that we can now apply to the structure that we have in our own cities, in our own towns, in our own communities. So they take that as an example to say, well, we can do this here, right? And we can use the same resources to do so, which allowed them to do it there. And people are inspired, and people say, well, wait, look, they're across the world now. This movement is everywhere. And it just keeps growing from there. So this is where rallies can come really helpful. Why be secret? Embrace the times. A lot of clubs, a lot of groups may want to not be in the public eye, and, I have to ask, well, why is that? If we're trying to change the world and we realize that we have to change the minds of the general public, why not have meetings in public? Why not, want to get this out to as many people as possible, especially if it's knowledge that is kept away from them? And so in this case, a scenario where it comes down to knowledge and to educating the public, and if that's the, again, quote from Jefferson, the only sure reliance for our liberty and the preservance of our liberty, then we need to do that. We need to educate people and not be secret, but be rather open. If we're there together, then it won't feel so like, oh my gosh, I need to be super brave for this and I'm afraid to do it. No, because we have a lot of people, it would actually feel good. It's saying, well, we can stand up together. We got this. We'll defend each other. We got this. And so changing the world equals changing the minds of the masses. As we said before, people are looking for change. That's something you must know. You might think a lot of people in the dark or don't care, but there's actually a lot of people who agree with these ideas of natural law and freedom. And you'd be surprised. If you ever think you're alone on something, don't think you're alone. There's always people, and they're closer than you think. Just because you don't see them and interact with them on a daily basis doesn't mean that they're not there. So prepare and press is what I like to say, right? Because we also have to prepare for what's coming at the same time. We can still deal with some symptom-based management, but we got to continue to press on with the main thing that we have to do. And that is education of statism, education of natural law. There's no reason why we can't tackle the other things at the same time, but we have to keep attacking the root cause here. Otherwise, the symptoms will just keep arising. So an example of change now is a demonstration. Okay, so I'm saying now, which is the current world I live in, which is 2021, and it is currently, it is currently May 30th. And an example of change now would be walking into a place with no masks, because the world is currently under mandate, and you have to do this, you have to do that. And if you want to show that you are free and that you have the right to choose what you want to do, with numbers of people, walk into places. That's why I say with use of the network, walk into somewhere with no masks and film it. Simply film you being the change by simply walking without one. You don't have to say anything either, because people will walk up to you naturally. I mean, they basically give you the content, but you don't have to do much, because nowadays, especially in a world as it continues to be more and more oppressed, it's not hard to get into conflict or to controversy, because again, the more deceived people are, the more controversy there is for truth. And controversy, as we said in the beginning of this presentation, is only dreaded by the advocates of error, people who don't want to be seen for what they're doing is wrong. They don't want to come to terms with the fact that what they're doing is wrong. And thus, this intervention, which is really non-invasive, they'd be the ones who are making it somewhat invasive by walking up to you and say you shouldn't do this, when you have every right to, by natural law, to choose what you want to do with your own body, just as they have every right to decide if they want to wear a mask or not. Okay, everybody has the choice. And I think it's important that people educate each other freely, with no censorship, about these issues. Shall it actually be a truthful thing in existence, such as a virus, that people need to be made aware of? So one of the key messages here when it comes to this action of demonstration and education and presentation, all this stuff, is to commit to transmit. So commit to bring your voice out there. Don't ever suppress what you feel like you need to say and what you need to bring to other people. Don't ever push that down. Always move forward, and when you feel something's not right, you have to speak up, because that is a feeling you cannot ignore. You know, if you feel like something's not right, listen to your body when it comes to your health. Otherwise, things get worse, right? So the same thing with the world and your mindset here. If you feel like something's not right, speak up about it, ask some questions, and get the knowledge behind what's going on, and say and try to see where the logic is, and people can come to their own conclusions. Sometimes questions are a really good way to talk to people and get them to think differently. By simply their own mental processes, because we're often battling, again, our own minds, so we can catch people in their own mental loops. So reach those who are in the dark and don't agree, as I said. And those are the people who actually need this information the most. Again, that's the bottom of the pyramid. Those who are in the dark are the bricks. So serve the world, not just your country, right? Because we're looking at nature, we're looking at universal laws, and there's a lot of people to free on earth from these systems that be. So we're not just looking at America, although it can start in America, and we can make a difference here in this part of the world. We hope that we can spread to the rest of the world, so we can start by using terms such as the world and not associating ourselves under certain borders and countries, where we're automatically presuming that there's some sort of government there again, which does not inherently exist in nature. So are you really serving by politics or by police or by, being in the army? You're not serving anything. You're serving somebody's will and judgment and saying you have to go there, you have to do this, and your vote is your voice, but you're not serving anything other than these base desires of complaints and feeling that, okay, well, you're serving people ruling over you, if that's what you want to consider serving, but you're not serving the world. You're not serving truth. You're not serving nature. If you're serving nature, you'd simply be doing as nature intends you to do, which is take control of your own life, be sovereign, be responsible, don't let other people take control of you, and know who you are, right? You don't have a special claim in your life. You're not special. You're just a human being like everyone else. Why should you want to be special? That is understanding serving truth and serving nature, not, serving some sort of ego, right? An egocentric system or any other pyramid system that politics or policing does, where you're putting certain banners on people and certain costumes and badges, presuming that there's some sort of supernatural superhuman entity. So these are things, again, I don't expect you to understand right away, and I understand they might be really alarming statements, but it's simply the truth. And the problem that we have here with politics and with police and so forth is they mix truth with lies, and they make these lies look really appealing to people through mixing it with different forms of truth. And that's what makes it the most dangerous, is because people don't have a full knowledge of what is going on. It is not holistic, and thus they still allow wrongdoing to take place without even realizing it. And again, that is a quote, mixing lies with truth, making it the most dangerous. A lot of people talk about that often for good reason, because it's very deceiving. That's how you deceive people psychologically. So when we talk about education, what's a good example of this? Well, my website, nita.one, and you can go to /advanced, tons of educational material. Boom, that's the education. Okay, you got videos, study guides, slides, books. I got a lot of different book references on there as well. Integration is the numbers for changing minds. It says individual behavior choices, either based in harmony or opposition to natural law, combine in energy and effect, and in the aggregate, influence the quality of the manifested shared human experience. This dynamic acts as a perfect expression of the principle of correspondence, which states as above so below, as below so above, decisively contrary to the New Age view. In order for a quantum shift to take place, numbers are required. And what that basically is saying is that numbers are required for the change that we wish to see in the world. We need to be the change, and we need to have numbers of people coming together, because that energy builds up in the aggregate, and it basically is like a bomb that just expands, or like a balloon. It keeps expanding and it goes poof, and the whole world hears it, right? That's what we want when it comes to this idea of natural law itself, and to anything that we want to raise awareness to the public. We want enough people to understand it, so that way certain actions don't have to be done that are wrong, right? And so we have to invoke the energy that is currently there and manifest it. And I think a lot of that energy and inspiration is also in the younger generation, and that could also be used for the younger generations. I see a lot of younger generations who might be depressed or full of anxiety. I don't want that to happen. I want them to be inspired. I want them to have that energy and see the destiny, and realize that their life is meaningful. There's so much purpose in it. And it's not what, the schools have told them, where it's all analytics and, science determines everything, but that there is a lot to explore in this world, that we don't know everything, and we can admit to that. There's so much to learn, and that you have energy being as young as you are, so you can help share these ideas with more people. You can make more of an impact, and there's a lot you can do. You can make a name for yourself for the generations to come. So I think the younger generations as another action step is a good target market when it comes to changing the world, especially over generations, which is what we're doing, especially with the movement that I created over the years. So in my movement, you might ask, well, why will it work, and what have I done to contribute to this work within itself? And, well, what I basically state is that government will never rise again only if we know our rights, we know natural law, and or rid of the belief in statism. And so conversation is key. And that's how I know it'll work. I've also, studied things such as the Tytler cycle and Toynbee's works, as it says there. In 1 year, I have over thousands of quotes, hundreds of plus hours of content. I'm sure there's even more than that. I've worked night and day for this forever head life mission. I am even tonight, doing this recording. I've read over 60 books regarding changing the world in just that particular topic and other surrounding topics, and you can see more about that on nita.one/advanced perspective. You can look at my slides there. I have a bunch of book references, books by Martin Luther King Jr., books about Gandhi, the Founding Fathers. I even have some of the Founding Fathers' own books. I've done personal activism and sharing this with others in real life. I've done videos where I talk to people on the streets, and I really get out there. And I've done live streams. I've tried experimenting with different things to try to bring this education to more people, and it's amazing to me sometimes the response to the people who really do look into things. They really start to see a perspective they never would have expected if they didn't look into it. So it's amazing. Once you actually look into it and you understand it, you see a whole thing opens up for you. Once you understand natural law, it's the root to everything. Everything else opens up for you. I created a test sheet about natural law, a question sheet, a dictionary, an action list based on natural law, 310 actions, okay, that you can also look at if you need help with actions. I observed other movements, present and past, and networks alike, such as freedom cells, and seeing how much change they can make, and how they're also more integration focused and not so much education or representation, but they're still making an impact nonetheless, and we have to learn about how we can make more of an impact if we want to. So all it relies on here, and especially my movement, is numbers of people, and what we have to do is fight ignorance and fear, and we need to fulfill representation, networking, and education. So these are the main action steps, and that is what I've done to contribute to those main action steps so far. Now, my movement I consider is invincible by design, because not only are we talking about universal concepts that are eternal, so this will be forever relevant, but real-life action bypasses online censorship, because a lot of people complain about how their channels being taken down and so forth. But this will actually provide a base in real life where you don't really have to worry about that. This is the real natural social media. It's getting to know people one-on-one in real life and connecting with them and talking with them face to face. And that automatically builds communities, when you have this real life action, so to help create disintegration and demotion. So integration's in the process of naturally sharing upon your moral obligation. The knowledge that you see will help free people. People will look up to that and they'll see how amazing that is. They'll see the value that it has within their own life as well, and they'll want to join it, especially as the world keeps getting more and more corrupt as it is. People will keep looking for new solutions, and so you being present there with your solutions and with the ideas you have will start to gain ground in the world as time moves on. So we have to create that foundational stage so that people can grasp onto it and move it forward into the generations to come to make more of an impact. Now, the message is ingrained in the flag, right? If you look at my flag in my movement, you'll see there's an N, there's an I, there's a T, and there's an A. And you'll notice there's a lot of natural colors. And, you have the colors of the tree, the sun, the grass, the water, the fire, the air, whatever. All those elements, and it's also described on the website, is all there in the flag because it's supposed to represent nature itself. And because it has letters in it, I think it's also more telling and people can recreate it, which is great. And I have a video as well talking about how you can recreate it for yourself if you're really interested, although of course you can probably figure it out for yourself. And I think it's also something good for your own personal contributions to saying, now I'm a part of it because I contributed to it. I made something special on my own behalf based on what I do, and I've connected it to this so I can feel like I'm a part of it more. And I think that's important so we can make even more of an impact, like I said. So then I also have something called the share sheet, which is on the front page of the website. And it's otherwise known as the front page of the website. Listed on the flag stands the foundation of the movement. And if the website ever gets taken down, this is what you have as the share sheet. And this is basically the foundation. So whatever the movement is basically stood for in this sheet. Okay, and he says it's very simple, talking about why nature is the answer, what nature means, what natural law is, what the intentions are. It's very, very simple, and it's just listed on the front page of the website. Okay, so that's what the flag will essentially bring you to this website with this share sheet and with natural law resources so you can learn more. And the people who do look more into it are more likely to be more outspoken about it because they understand the knowledge, they see the value in it, they see that we have to free people from slavery, so it's a pretty important matter. And so again, if the website ever gets taken down, what we have is this sheet to share with people anyways, so it won't matter. Nature's the answer is never going to die as a phrase. It's always going to continue and just grow from here, especially if more and more people keep sharing it. Then no matter the pace, as long as it's continuing to increase, eventually it will get out to the whole world. And so content regarding nature or truth speaks for itself in time. And that's what a lot of this is telling us, at the end of the day, is that if it's based in truth, it's always going to just keep growing more and more relevant through time. If we seek to learn from history, if we seek to actually create a better world for the future and fix the mistakes that we made in the past. So you can create and share materials and help create the conversation, and you can use a share sheet too. You can use other materials to help yourself do that. If you want more materials, go to nita.one/share. There's plenty of materials there. You can print them up yourself. Again, remake them as you want. Don't make yourself a threat. We are all to be the change. We're all here to be the change with one another. Not one person is the central figure here. We're all in this together. We are the movement. And this is a summary of a lot of what we talked about, but I want you to look here at the multiplicative expression, okay? Now, first off, let's go at the top. It says statism, the divisive and negative illusion that government is necessary, therefore natural. This is the root to all manifested evil in our world of an otherwise beautiful nature. Okay, so that kind of recaps what we said. Now, if we look at the light green category here, the multiplicative expression, we have courage for love, because you need to defend love, you need to promote love. So the care to act and be. You have conversation for knowledge, because you need to share it. It's the examples of knowledge, examples of bringing that knowledge to people to actually put into action. And responsibility, because you need to realize that it is your responsibility to take control of yourself and thus be sovereign. You need direction and the moral obligation to do so. And then you need guidance for freedom, helping people realize that, you can help people in the world. You don't have to control them and force things to get done. No, it's voluntaryism, and it's conscience of choosing right and wrong action, and understanding that we all generally understand what is right and wrong, and those are the guiding principles that tell us to be more free and not have more control. And that's what's going to overall promote more order in the world, or just generally more positive expression, which is a manifested understanding of natural law, knowing our rights and knowing that love is going to create more order in the world as a whole. But that is where, you can say love is the answer too, but it requires that the understanding that nature is the answer, because it's in your nature to be able to love to begin with. And if you don't have that, then you can't love. So nature and nature is the answer go hand in hand, just as denature and statism go hand in hand. So, what side do you choose? Do you choose the side of the government and letting your life be controlled by the few? Or do you choose the side of the world, of the all, of the many, and empowering the all of the people with the knowledge that is there with them to empower them and free themselves from slavery? This has been the goal of all humankind. So we need to learn, we need to educate and attract the good aspects of society, what we call good, right? Which is this, because we know it's going to help us, versus the things that we know is not going to help us. And so we need to red pill people from that. We need to detract from the things that we don't want, the things that we know are going to harm us. And so to conclude here, I have a quote, as stated in The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. Personal sovereignty is the end of evil, when every person on earth will defend themselves and those they love, when evil cannot gain even a foothold because all people are watching for it, and recognize that it seeks to destroy their value. This is the exact opposite of perfect evil, in which every person is a slave and a master of slaves. Perfect liberty is life, and in it there are no masters and there's no slaves. There's no masters of slaves. Perfect liberty is life. You are the key to teach the people of earth the value that they have within themselves. You need only speak and tell them that every good thing is theirs to have. You need only tell them that the glory of liberty is real and that it belongs to them. And so everything falls into place naturally with the riddance of statism, as nature favors sustainably. All that's required then is education of statism, as by education of natural rights and natural law, or common sense and morality, which is essentially the same thing. So thank you, for watching this whole thing and staying tuned for all three parts of this presentation. I wanted to go a little deeper into action, so thank you for allowing me to make a recording for this. If this has inspired you in any way, please feel free to obtain a full understanding of natural law and what we must do at nita.one/advanced. This time is well worth your time, because that is your spiritual currency. It's time and attention, what you pay attention to and how much you spend your time on certain things that are actually going to benefit you versus things that are not. A lot of people will watch TV all day long or do things that aren't actually productive or actually, really worldly changing, but this is something that affects everybody, and this is what's really going to free the world. So I encourage you to check out that link, and feel free to reach out to me for any more resources or assistance in any questions you may have. Remember that nature is the answer, knowledge is power, help bring it to all people, we can change the world. And if you want more resources, you can consider the following: The Most Dangerous Superstition from Larkin Rose. I used some quotes here in this presentation. That final quote was from The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. That's the book in the middle. And on the right, there's a lot of sources in this book. It goes over almost everything you could think of. It's called Government, the Biggest Scam in History. I can't say the guy's name who wrote it, but it's a great book as well. So thank you for watching part 3. This is Cory, Edmund, Endrulat, Nature's the Answer. As a side note, if you have any questions, just remember nature's the answer, and here are more resources for today's environment when it comes to certain topics of today. I figured to mention it just as a shout out, and also do not forget about survival. Very, very important as we move forward in the world and we see things collapsing or coming to extreme ends, and so when people are in any state of confusion or unsureness, as we see with negative natural law expression, we have to understand that that's going to be used for control, and if you are already prepared and you are ready for survival, you will not let that control run over your life. So be prepared, have stuff ready for survival, and I think that's also another topic that people can talk about more, but do not forget the root cause to the situation, which is what got us here to begin with, which is order following and letting evil be done to the world and upon us. If you would like to download the slides and see more of the slides from this presentation for yourself, please go to nita.one/sheets or nita.one/advanced perspective so you can see it for yourself and look over the extra slides that I have in everything that was presented here for you today. Thank you very much.